YouTube friends, Ben.o.Cichlid here, and I had a bit of a algae 911, and I had to call in the cavalry, and by that what I mean is I had to bring in a couple Plecos from the other tanks to help clean up this tank. And in doing so, I started thinking about some of the considerations and thoughts that people have expressed over the years about Plecos, in particular Plecos in a cichlid tank. So I thought I'd tackle the subject and perhaps get your input on it. And let's go ahead and jump into it and take a look. As you can see here in a prior video, the algae had gotten pretty thick, and ever since I removed the algae scrubber, which though it might not have been large enough to fully service this tank, it was definitely consuming a lot of the nutrients needed by algae. And so when I took it out, when I removed it, I noticed an immediate increase in the thickness and volume of the algae that I was getting throughout the tank. So again, you can refer back to the natural nitrate reduction videos that I've done on the Santa Monica filtration algae scrubber for information on that. But you can see how thick the algae was on the back wall there. So I certainly had to do something about it, and I ended up calling in the troops. I also started thinking about some of the considerations I've heard over time regarding keeping clowns, because I also keep clown loaches. And I've certainly heard some considerations about those guys. So I figured I'd go ahead and tackle both subjects at once and give you my thoughts on it and perhaps get your input on the subject. A lot of folks seem to have opinions on it. I used to hear more about it maybe a year, 2 years ago than I do now. Maybe it's calmed down a bit, I'm not sure. But let's start off by looking at the clowns and talking about them first, and then I'll get back to this tank and we'll talk a little bit about the Plecos, okay? All right. These clowns became part of my tank after I saw them in the cichlid tanks of several fish keepers that were on YouTube, and I became very, very interested in getting some because of the color and diversity that they add to the tank. But shortly after getting them, I started to hear concerns and complaints from some folks about how they were really not intended to live within the conditions required to maintain a healthy cichlid tank. And of course my favorite, well, they might be surviving, but they're not thriving. But yet when I look at them, and I look at the years that they've spent in the tank, and how vibrant they are, both in color and in activity level, compared to tanks I've seen them in that were set up with the right parameters, technically the right parameters for a clown, it would seem like my observations are contradicting the concerns or complaints that I'm hearing. I certainly would like to hear what you have to say. In hindsight, maybe I would not have gotten them, but I was very early in the hobby, fell in love with them, and made a decision to keep them. And they have been a part of one of my cichlid tanks from the very beginning. The concerns are, of course, the pH level that they live in nature versus the pH levels needed for a cichlid tank. I believe in their natural habitat, you'd probably be closer to a 7, maybe to a 7.5, as opposed to the 7.9 to 8.1 pH that you'll find in a tank like this one. But if you look at them, what do you think? Do they look to you like they're suffering? Again, express your thoughts below. I'd be curious to hear. And let's take a look at the Plecos. In this previously recorded video, you can see the thickness of the algae in the background, and it was really becoming just too much, even for me. And I'm a big fan of algae because, as you know, it removes nitrates, adds oxygen, does good things, removes CO2. But it was getting just too thick, and so something needed to be done. And so instead of going through a major project, I brought the Plecos over. And by major project, of course, what I mean would be removing that background, removing all the decor, giving everything a good scrub down, and then reinstalling everything. And for anyone that's carried out a project like that, you know how major that is and how traumatic that can be for the fish. So if I could avoid that, that was a good thing. And if you look at the back wall now, what you'll notice is that there is a lot of the background color showing where before it was solid blotches of algae. So a lot of the, the tan, brownish color of the background, where it used to be, especially in this area right here, entirely dark green, you can see now it's actually showing the color of the background, primarily due to the efforts of the Plecos, which have been hard at work since I brought them over. This, of course, is the albino bushy nose. Also have a common Pleco. And of course, the drawback with Plecos is the waste that they produce. That algae doesn't just disappear, but it turns into very long strands of waste that then needs to be continuously vacuumed out of the tank. This one is the common. And I also have just a regular bushy nose in here. You can't see the regular bushy nose because he's hanging behind this rock right here. There's an indention behind it that is the perfect size that he fits into. So he just hangs behind this thing when he's not out working algae off of the rocks and background. The concern or complaint out here about having Plecos in this tank is actually having to do with, again, the water conditions in nature that these Plecos live in versus the conditions that are required to keep healthy cichlids. The water hardness, right, the pH, are different from what occurs in nature. Now, some people will argue that the Plecos that we buy are have been bred in captivity for so long that some of those factors might not matter quite as much. Others tell me that having my Plecos in a tank like this is destroying them, destroying their livers, killing them, and shortening their lives. I see fish that look healthy, that are active, and very healthy looking. So some of the observations are contradictory to some of the concerns, but again, I would like to hear your thoughts on it. Tell me what you think about it, and they have certainly done a good job with this tank. And I was just about to pull the background out and the rocks and give them all a scrub down, but then I decided, well, let me just move a couple Plecos from the other tanks, put them together with the bushy nose that's already in here, and let them go to work. And a little bit at a time, they are getting it clean. And that is definitely a lot less traumatic for the fish than having me get in there and have to remove a background. So there you have it. Share your thoughts and comments below. Love to hear them, and I often respond when I can. And I know this has been a bit of a touchy and controversial subject for some time. And so I certainly would love to hear your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. I thank you so much for tuning in. You know you are appreciated. And that's it for now. Thank you. There's the other bushy-nosed Pleco.